one. Well, hey, Dave Melenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I got a special treat for us. So often we talk with people that talk theory, and maybe they created something, wrote a book, started a program, something like that. We're going to shift it today to actually do a deep dive into a company and look at it from a different perspective. So I found an awesome guy. Honored to be hanging out with Brad Davis, Director of Sales and Marketing at Charter Wire. How are you, my friend?
Doing great, Dave. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited
Absolutely.
about this one. Great topic.
Yeah, I think that looking at it from a director, situation. Again, a lot of times we talk theory, and it's hard sometimes to get theory to talk into reality. So I think that's going to be a great opportunity to understand how you, work with your sales team, how you work with, the marketing side, and so. But I wanted to kind of ask you a question because we kind of share a similar thought about the state of the sales profession as we currently see it. So, what are your
hmm
experiences? You travel all over the world. You were in Europe last week. You're going to be out in the Middle East or wherever. You're always
Yeah.
going. Maybe I'm not even supposed to know where you're going. It's probably a Mission Impossible type thing. But what do you see, Brad, in your travels as kind of the state, and what has Charter Wire been, able to uncover when they think and look at the state of the sales profession today?
Yeah, well, you were right. I'm not really a theorist and then I'm consulting or writing books. I'm actually in sales function, been in it for a long time. And my perspective is really, I'm concerned about our profession overall. It's failing, has been failing for decades, mostly because of sales leadership and issues there. And Um, I know this for a couple of reasons. First of all, there was a Gartner study done for Harvard Business Review. I don't know if you saw this, but um, they did a research project with
Okay.
CEOs and asking them whether they believe that their sales executives could deliver on their strategic plans, their long-term
Oh,
strategic
sure.
plans. And the feedback was it was almost zero. Like there's zero trust in our profession and a lot of turnover.
Well,
So, I mean, I will say that I am fortunate, in my position at Charter because we have built some trust. I've been here for a length of period to where there's a track record, and
yeah.
the so I'm in a kind of a fortunate position here. But overall in the industry, I mean, the data says that there's not a lot of trust here. Plus, there's just the eye test. Like if you were to describe somebody, say, hey, I have a friend named Joe, he's super salesy. That's his personality. It's just got a negative connotation to it. So
Sure. Yeah.
the position just overall isn't a very good place, which is too bad because, you mentioned my travels, and for somebody young, B2B outside sales is a really great career. You get to travel, you get to meet nice people, you make some money because you're driving revenue for the
Yeah.
business, and there's also wins and losses. It's like sports. It's fun. You win or lose every day.
Well, and some people like that, Brad, and some people don't, right? The wins and losses thing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's a tough one. The higher the competitive is an individual, a lot of times the harder it is to take that loss. And,
hmm
but also the higher you celebrate those wins. But I want to go back to something you said because I don't want to bypass that. You mentioned like a sales plan. I mean, in my travels, it's not too common to see outside sales professionals, B2B type sales professionals, with a goal, with a path to get to that goal, with, benchmarks along the way. Those are not necessarily as prevalent as they used to be. It's almost like, hey, why don't congratulations, here's your keys, there's the bathroom, go sell, And I was
Yeah.
just curious on your end if is that how you guys are at Charter, or is there a pretty systematic way to success for outside
Well,
sales?
you know, you mentioned my travels, and I see a lot of companies, and I've seen thousands of manufacturing companies, and I'd say a lot of them are stuck. I mean, they're not really growing. They've been there for decades. They've gotten really efficient at what they do.
Okay.
and they're always doing continuous improvement. And what that does is it makes them, you know, difficult to compete against because they're so efficient, but they're not growing. It makes it very
Yeah.
difficult to grow. So, you know, in my opinion, you need three things as a sales leader when you're looking at trying to grow or, like you said, having plans. You need the
Yeah.
great growth strategy. You need the great sales team to execute, and you need the great sales process. So a strategy leads to, you know, what your overall growth strategy is for the team, what your targets are, and then the team is someone who you're putting in place that can execute it, and then the process is the how do you set metrics and
Wow.
targets and things like that with your team.
Gotcha. And is that I'm assuming the team is, the easy part. It's easy, probably the easiest part is to get, meet and the seed people in there, so to speak. But I gotta believe it's harder than Brad to get them to follow a process. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so you work with a multiple of sales professionals that are on your team. I got to believe that some people come in with their own kind of agenda. They come in with their own sales plan. I mean, how do you align? Like, if I was, wanting to join your team and I had a different sales approach than what Charter had, for instance, or that you had, how do you guys work together to be able to
Yeah,
create a best process?
that's a big question. And I'll go back to sales leadership is really hard. You know, if someone said they have the perfect answer for that question you just asked, I'd say go get a coach because you
Yeah.
know it's not it just doesn't exist. It's such
Right.
a difficult. Some of the issues are. I mean, the outside salespeople are. You know, they have to follow through. They have to be able to prospect. They have to manage their, you know, their activities. They have to be conscious of their sales targets and have that strategic outlook. And they'll
Right.
have to keep their relationships. There's so many things to do. And as a sales leader, you also have the forecasting, the business planning, the strategy, all these other things on top of it. So
Sure.
it's just to do what you're doing or to implement that, you really do need to work with a coach to
Yeah.
help you along with these people. So and there's the failure comes from it starts with the hiring. You're because you were saying you're going to bring someone in with these kind of attributes. Then the
Yeah.
second part is the training. And then on the process side, when you are looking at metrics, you know how those things are also there's a lot of issues with how I guess the profession is dealing in those situations. So I can
Yeah.
it's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you talk about, excuse me, things like prospecting and, creating target
Mm-hmm.
counts and, strategies and forecasting. I mean, it's hard for one person to be good at all of the assets or all
Mm-hmm.
pieces in a sales process. So, like you might have somebody that's a really strong prospector that they can uncover opportunities like crazy. So you have that person that's good at that. And then you might have another person that, can sell ice to Eskimos because they're such
Mm-hmm.
closers. Do you run across that in your journey, Brad, that you're seeing somebody on the team's got this strength, somebody has this strength? Is that pretty common from what you're seeing?
Yes, I mean there's I mean I look at it kind of differently than I think is traditional. First of all, go to start with the hiring process.
Okay.
So the issue with hiring is you know, you look at these typical job descriptions for salespeople, and they want, you know, somebody who's very like aggressive, you know,
Yeah.
extroverted, won't take no for answers, and things like this. And you picture someone busting in a company and shoving product down someone's throat, and that's supposedly a good thing.
Right.
But you know,
Yeah.
why would you want to put that in front of your customers? I mean, that's what the problem is. When you look at, I mean, the role of the position is to create value for a customer. So
Okay.
what's value? Value is, you know, the definition would be the experience that the customer currently has and what the customer's needs are. So closing that gap is what you want somebody to do.
Sure.
So in order to do that, you want to hire someone with like strategic thinking skills and listening skills, and obviously someone who can build a relationship but someone who has curiosity, and that's different than what the industry typically wants or has been targeted for hiring. So
Well,
then,
oh, go ahead.
okay, I was just going to say then, as far as the training and putting people in right roles, like people have different attributes, that's where it's very difficult. And that's where again, I would say you need somebody. I would get an outside coach to help with that, who's someone who's experienced, because you have to go deep into somebody's personality to really
Yeah,
uncover their strengths and where they're comfortable, so to set them up to be, um, to be successful. And
yeah,
obviously, at that point, you can root out if somebody's not going to prospect. That's something you can root out really early. But if somebody a different you know attribute might be somebody who has the positive versus the negative outlook on things,
sure.
or
Yep,
pessimist optimist.
yep,
So some pessimism might be okay because they're going to be they're going to think things through before they just go chasing something. But
right.
on the optimist side, if somebody's not very optimistic that they're going into a sales call and they're thinking something's not going to work out for them, you can't, that's a major issue to uncover before you put somebody in a certain role.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, yeah. I mean, Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So
yeah, exactly. Hmm.
definitely accurate. But I think I don't want to I don't want to miss over what you said, because I think there's a personality difference between a business development person and a customer service person. I mean, they're both customer oriented, they're both customer facing, but boy, they have such a different role within an organization. And then they have different, personalities to try to uncover and unpack for the business developer, and then the customer service has to be very patient. You bring up questioning, and I think it's interesting when we offer sales training, questioning techniques does not raise to the top. People want to know how to close, or they want to know how to network, they want to know how to prospect. But boy, that questioning thing that you just touched on, I think is so vital. Do you see that that's part of a winning strategy for a sales professional, Brad, is to make sure that you kind of almost have mastered the art of questioning?
I think that's probably the number one issue out there in the sales world. I guarantee you the typical sales call, um, especially on that first visit, from what I've seen, is salespeople go in, and they're actually trained to do this. They go in
Yeah,
and make a presentation, and they'll show, okay, here's the company was founded in 1800 with some pictures of someone in a garage. And then
right.
they walk through, okay, here's what our company does.
Yep,
They talk about college football, and then
yep.
you know, here's a brochure, and apparently that's a good meeting. So, and that
Right,
yeah, and it's a disaster because that's the most valuable meeting in a company is salesperson to potential customer. What
right,
could be more important than that? And
right. Yeah,
the only way to be successful is by listening and questioning. And we always have a rule that um, customers should be speaking 70% of the time,
perfect.
and
Yep,
whoever is listening is winning that conversation.
right. Yep,
So
yep. And it's hard, let's be real. It's hard for a sales professional, number one, to keep their mouth closed, because most outside sales professionals they like to talk, they like to hear
yeah.
themselves talk. But I think the harder thing is actually listening when the prospect is talking. There's hearing, which is a biological function, which again, when you're sleeping and your alarm goes off, you hear that. You weren't like actively thinking about it and waiting for it generally.
Hmm.
But that's where I think there's a huge difference between listening and hearing, because we have to listen for buying signs, pain. We have to listen for, connection opportunities. I mean, I know for myself, I'm always trying to make connections with people and make their life easier. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think it starts at that questioning, like, what do you need? what's your biggest fear? What's your, there's such great questions. Do you guys spend a lot of time at Charter on those questions so that they have a pretty good sense of those questions going into a meeting?
Yes, and that's really when we go through the presentation, that's how we're really setting up our presentation is first thing is what we do is we present what we believe is our value proposition or our understanding of your business and what your needs are. Because that is the number one thing you need to find out. So start right there. And that
Yeah.
way, you're listening for the customer's response and, their brains are turned on because they want value. That's what they're after. They're not, looking for, your picture of your founder. So
Right.
yeah, exactly. So that is the first thing you do is you set up the presentation to try and find out what that value is. And then you're trying to connecting to how you can close the gap to what they're currently getting.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and I think that there's this difference, and I'm writing it down as we speak. You can either
Mhm.
gather information in a sales call or you can give information. And if you're listening 70% of the time, you're
Mhm.
gathering a ton of information,
Yeah.
where they buy from in the past, how they like to buy, how do they like to learn, how do they communicate? I mean, there's so many more things that people listen for than just, are they going to buy something from me right now, And to
Yeah.
me, it's kind of like on LinkedIn. I don't know if you're getting hit with this, Brad, but man, I get hit with this every week. Somebody somewhere in the world can, promise
Yeah.
me the sun, the moon, and the stars,
Yeah.
right?
It's every
And it's,
day. I get
yeah,
people selling me stuff literally every day, telling
number
me
one, I
what they
don't.
offer. It's AI marketing data tools that I'm supposed to. Yeah, it's
I don't even know the person.
right.
I don't they don't know me.
Yeah,
I love when I get this. I've been getting this email lately, and hey, how can we help you grow your roofing company? And
yeah,
it's like,
uh,
what? I mean,
yeah,
where do you get roofing company out of what I do, And so it's crazy. But I think I wanted to ask a question before we take our break, but like I listened to an article or I read an article that you wrote recently, and the question was, can you work for a large company and still make a difference? And I
hmm
think there's a lot of sales professionals that kind of get lost in the shuffle. I mean, especially you guys are a big company. It feels like you could get lost just kind of showing up, doing your bare minimum, so to speak. I mean, how does the sales director like make sure there's engagement? Because I know engagement is one of, Charter's core tenets of faith. And how do you get that engagement in your team currently?
yeah. It's the article was um, where I think the post was about these big companies, and yet it doesn't feel like you can do a lot. But
Right.
there's been a lot on LinkedIn about, oh, you should go work for a startup or take
Right.
some kind of big risk. I mean, you
Yep.
don't need to do that. You can do that in a big company by, again, being curious and, trying to, I mean, a startup you can almost do within an organization. I think that's
Sure.
really really a fun way to do it. The reason is they have resources and they have
Yeah.
customers.
Yeah.
So you should be thinking about your value proposition based on what you currently have in place. And if you can have a growth strategy of, there's so many things you could do. You can add more items to sell to your current customers that are already buying from you. You
Yeah.
can expand geography. I mean, you can do a lot of things that actually reinvent yourself that feels like a startup in your current role in a large company. Why wouldn't you do that
Yeah.
if you have the resources behind you and the company is looking for growth?
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think it gets often overlooked is you think you're going to be a number, you think you're going to, just become part of this big machine and lose your individuality. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where, again, like the couple people that I work with on your team, we try to really encourage them to use their strengths.
Yeah.
That what is your strength? Everybody on your team kind of has a different strength. And then hopefully that strength is aligning with the seat that they're on in the bus and it all really gels well. So That to me is really important. So when we come back, I want to talk about the training and onboarding and the coaching thing, because you really have a deep respect for it, and it's working for you. So let's unpack that when we get back.
Okay.
Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Brad Davis, Director of Sales and Marketing at Charter Wire. And they were founded in 1936. So that feels like an old company. That feels like one of these anywhere approaching 100 years now. It really feels like an old company. How do you keep the sales process fresh? Because I would feel like we're back in the days. Remember back, you can remember those trifold things you
Yeah.
put on the and you
Mm-hmm.
flip through, before laptops and all that. And all that, boy, there's probably half the world listening right now that are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
But how do you keep it fresh at Charter for your team? Because you have younger people on your team. It's not like they were around in the 30s when whole thing started. So how do you keep that fresh for the team?
No, this is like an exciting time. I mean, there's a lot of mature companies out there. I mean, we're not alone. This is pretty standard. There's a lot
Yeah.
of old manufacturing, mature manufacturing. Um, and right now, we're getting some benefits from some tariffs and protection. So more domestic manufacturing is going to be great.
Yeah.
But you really do. I mean, what we did is we took a total fresh approach. We were lucky that the executive team gave us some freedom to take a new approach in our business.
Good.
And we started with, I think the most important thing we did is we started with our strategy, and we hired we hired a position with a strategic marketing manager
Okay.
that is critical. And all that person does is under diagnoses our marketplace. What we do well, what is our differentiators, what's the customer need, what do our competitors do, to make
Yeah.
sure we understand our differentiators, and then connecting those to positive customer outcomes. So that's
Sure.
all this person does.
Okay.
And
So they find an opportunity, and then they hand it off to somebody else to kind of develop that and then maintain it. Is that correct?
they just create the value proposition and develop, here's a strategy here, whether it's a piece of equipment, whether it's a new, we need some different people, here's what we
Sure.
do to bring a value to a customer, which
Yeah.
is any mature company can do that. And then once we understood that, we kind of redid some things with our team, having focused on different markets. There's distribution, there's direct customers, there's an automotive direct is kind of different. So we kind of tailored sales roles to what the marketplace needed,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
then hired based on who we thought would fit those roles well.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, and I think you're bringing up a ton of advantages for
Mm-hmm.
anybody that's thinking about making a career change or a move. And if a mature company is on your list of potentials, I mean, think of what Brad just said. We
Mm-hmm.
have somebody, they have somebody that just is uncovering opportunities. I mean, if you're a sales professional and you're not good at that, how cool is that? That the company's like, here's some leads, here's some opportunities, develop relationships with these people. The
Yeah.
mature company allows you, I'm assuming, Brad, to be able to find the strength of the individual and really plug them into their strength. Is that a
Yeah.
safe assessment?
And I would do want to reiterate, because you have to have the strength to fit with the role, but it's not enough just to do the disc assessment or the sales assessment testing. You
Yeah,
just got to spend a lot of time understanding that and kind of looking through those with the individual. Hey, this is what I'm seeing in here. Is this true? I mean, is this going to fit you, or is this not going to fit you?
yeah,
And what's going to make you, where are you really going to be comfortable, and what are you going to struggle with? And
right.
that's not a 1 day, 1 hour exercise. That takes some time, has to be refreshed a lot. You have to think it through. And then if something's not going right, hey, what are we missing here?
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think now people are the brake lights are going on, Brad, because you use time, and that's one thing a lot of people don't have access of is time.
Hmm.
So, this is again an advantage of a mature company is they have more opportunities for you in this. And like you mentioned on the disc side, we use disc in the sales world. We can tell if somebody's going to be a strong closer. We can tell if somebody's going to be a strong prospector.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where, again, you can now hone in that job. You're looking for someone that's strong in prospecting. Those are really hard to find, but when you find them, they just shine. They do such a
Yeah.
great
But
so I
use a
think
coach. Don't try and do it on your own. And it's again, it's the industry hasn't done a good job of it. So make sure you're not trying to do it on your own.
well, and that's what's unique about it. And I was going to ask you this before the break, so I'm glad you brought that up. Does a good salesperson make a good sales manager?
Oh, no, typically not. I mean,
Good. Isn't that something, right? I
I
mean, we
mean, it
think,
does help because if they've been successful, they know how to do it. And I know that's a thing is that, what point of it is having a manager if they haven't done it in the past. But again, these
right.
are hard roles. And typically what's happened is, the good sales people might get promoted into sales leadership roles. But as we have already talked about, we know for a fact that sales leadership isn't working or hasn't worked for a long time. So
Yeah.
need to do something a little bit differently there and have more strategic leaders. I mean, my background is I was actually moved out of sales at one point to get into strategy and finance because I was interested in math and data.
Yeah.
And the company, even though I was successful in sales, said, well, we like people who play golf and make jokes on golf courses, so you should be doing something different. And then, but then later I found out that actually, being interested and curious about the finances and the
Yeah.
metrics actually is what you need in sales. So,
Well, and that's what I think is definitely unique about the path that you're on is most of the
mhm.
time director of sales are, and not that you're not, it's all about the relationship you bring
Mhm.
in addition to the relationship, you bring in that metric of tracking and accountability and benchmarks and
Yeah,
performance. Those are things that I think a lot of small business owners that are listening,
yeah,
let's face it, we have a lot of that. That's our big audience right now. And they have this concept, they have this thought process, Brad. They're like, I can coach myself. I don't need a coach. I'm just going to continue. It's the beatings will continue until morale improves type of thought, you know. And you're unique in that you have that number side of you. Does it
mhm.
sometimes do you sometimes have that battle in your mind between a sale and the finance side? Do you have that going on in your world?
Yeah. It's a little bit different because here's a let's talk about like a typical meeting internally when you go through
Sure.
sales.
Yeah.
It's like because you know, it's a lot of it is okay. What's our pipeline? That's a big thing. Is the internal meetings are about sales pipeline meetings,
Yeah.
and typically, you know, companies want, oh, we want all these leads, and we want 10 times our target in this funnel.
Yep.
And then the question is, okay, when we get in the PO, when do we get in the PO on this? And those are just not productive meetings. The salespeople are like hiding, and the executives
Yep.
are just trying to, how are we going to grow the business? But in my mind, I'm thinking, how's the process working?
Yeah.
Are we growing? We should be at like one or two times our growth target with the pipeline because we want to only be working on things that are connected to our strategy. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you start chasing. And I think most of the companies out there start chasing.
Right.
And that's what you can't do. That's where the salespeople who become sales leaders are more chasers
Yeah.
versus if you're a math and data person, you're going to be looking at the process and how we're working and is it working or not.
Yeah.
So
And somehow you got to do both, right? You got to do some, you know, pressing of the flesh with your client. You also have to have the data side. So when you say chasing, is it wrong for me to be in your driveway waiting for you? You know, it's stalk you like that if I'm trying to sell you something, and should I be in your driveway, or is that a little too aggressive?
it's okay, but it's like if you're chasing something, here's the issue is I think if you're going in a lot of driveways chasing, and some of the ones where it's like the guy wants something or needs something, and he has someone who can do it more efficiently than you can. I
Yeah,
mean, that's where you're just kind of dreaming or hoping or
sure.
just kind of
Yeah,
pressing somebody that you gave a presentation to at some point. But if
yeah.
you the whole point is, to work on things that are in the wheelhouse of your business that you know that you can do more efficiently than someone else, then why wouldn't you go and sit in someone's driveway and ask them for orders?
Yeah. Well, and some people really struggle with that. So again, if you're listening and you struggle asking for orders, you know, outside sales might not be the right spot for you, you know, not sure. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, inside sales is like kind of like, how can I help? You know, they're reactive as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to active. And we need both. So they're
Yeah.
equally important to each other. We can't have one without the other. But I love the fact that you're all about training. And again, a lot of times people just, especially sales, we spend a lot of time on product training, and then we spend less time on sales training and even less time on like process things. You know, like when you're hiring people, do you ask them, do you have a process? Are you open to our process? I mean, how do you broach that subject with somebody when you're first interviewing them?
Yeah. Well, we do the assessments up front and ask a lot of those questions up front to make sure somebody has the skill set, um, has a listen. First of all, the listening, the curiosity, the optimism, the personal relationships. There's four things that they have to show that there is in their personality,
Yeah,
kind of in their profile before we would, consider. But then the prospecting side and motivation is tough because you got to get that out right away.
yeah.
Um,
You either have it or you don't, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
that's one that's you're either motivated, like for some reason I'm motivated to do it, and it might not I come across as like a very aggressive, extroverted guy, but it's like it's just something that's in you.
yeah,
That yeah, I think it's just you see an opportunity to win and you want to do it, but if you're not
uh,
motivated, it's hard to train. That's a one. It's hard to train someone to be motivated.
right. Yep,
That's one where it's like you better hire someone who's motivated rather than just trying to train someone on motivation all the time.
right.
So, and that's
Well, and
something
that's the hard one.
yeah, that's a hard, I mean, I've struggled with that one in the past too.
Yeah, because you
Mm.
can't make somebody do it. And if you ask a question like, are you motivated? If you ask that question in an interview, no one in their right mind is going to be like, I am the farthest thing from motivated.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
they're not going to admit to you that they're not motivated. You know,
Yeah,
they're
you
going to be
can
like, oh my gosh.
you can trick it, get through the interview process and trick a test to make it seem like you're motivated, but
Yeah,
um, yeah,
it's
that
pretty
one's a
hard.
tough one.
Yeah, it's pretty hard with all the assessments today to try to trick that stuff. But
Hmm.
so how do you utilize an outside coach? What works? What are a couple things again for someone that might be listening, Brad, that's thinking I can do this myself. It doesn't need to be done, you know, the sales professional can do it on their own. What are some things that you utilize a coach for?
I think there's three things. I mean, one is just to do a double check on the hiring process because it's time consuming and expensive to, um, not do it right on the upfront. So
Yeah.
you
Yep.
want someone who's gonna be successful. You want to hire someone who's going to stay with the business. So use the coach just to make sure, you're making a good decision on your hire. And then
Sure.
secondly is that part about the right role based on a personality profile. That one, you know, um, I might probably do it more than most, but 5 or 6 sessions with a profile or an assessment to dig into somebody's strengths and weaknesses and tailoring that to a role is I use a coach for that. And
Yep.
then some of the if there's issues with the team, first of all, the teamwork, matching people. You have the marketing role, you have the customer service role, you have the sales role. You need interactions, understanding how people interact with each other. Coaches can
Yeah.
be great for that.
Sure. Well, and I think a lot of times, Brad, people think like in team building, they immediately think of, a fire and kumbaya with a guitar
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
we're all holding hands and stuff. And but the interesting thing is that like we don't really learn how to get along with other people. So
Mm-hmm.
if somebody on your team doesn't align or you don't mesh with, they're super talkative and you're super quiet.
Mm-hmm.
You're a results oriented person, they're a listener. I mean, there's opposites, so it's like you have those opposites on your team. And how, as a director of sales, how do you kind of smooth those over? How do you make everybody mesh together? I think that's got to be a tough one for you.
Yeah. Again, hard to do on your own. That's why we would use a coach for this. But um, that upfront, when you're looking at somebody's assessment, understanding how they like to communicate with other people. That's part
Yeah,
of that talking through, like how are they comfortable? How are they react to somebody? If you have an angry customer, how are they going to react? Those sort of things. Or angry person internally, how are they going to react?
right,
And then, when we do have a situation where, oh my gosh, these two people, this isn't working,
right.
that's where you really got to sit down and, typical leader would be, hey, you guys got to stop doing this. But it's better if you can explain the reason. Hey, this person's not coming into the office trying to make your life hard. You know what?
Right.
There's something with your communication styles that's not working. So let's figure it out.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that, I mean, a prime example is in that situation, we do a lot of conflict resolution training. And
Yeah.
when you have two people on a group in a team that have a conflict, hopefully each company that's listening has some type of policy on how to resolve conflict. Because there are certain personalities that are, when they're in conflict, they completely shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other personalities that get very aggressive. Well,
Mm-hmm.
if those two are at odds with each other on a team and one person always is going, leapfrogging or taking authority over the other person because the other person just shuts down. Those are hard. That's hard for a team, let alone a sales team to try to move forward. So, that's where I think we have no problem calling a lawyer. We have no problem calling a CPA. We have no problem, calling outside help for some of our, big things that we need help with. It just
Yeah.
seems like natural for you to have a coach of some kind because, again, I think the biggest thing coaches do is they help you with your blind spot. You have a blind spot, you just don't even know that this is going on. And I've coached plenty of people, you and I've been on some of these together where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, man, this person has no clue what they're doing.
Yep.
And you ask them the question and they still didn't acknowledge that they did something. They weren't listening to the customer, or they kept talking, or they just interrupted. I mean, I see all of that stuff. Do you see that? I mean, is that still in your travels, that those kind of softer skills, I think, are still what's missing in some of the sales training? Wouldn't you agree?
I mean, yeah, the profession hasn't done a good job with it because salespeople haven't been successful and the reputation of the profession is terrible. So that's where you can't get enough coaching. The coaching thing is interesting because why wouldn't you invest? The salespeople have a hard job. I mean, prospecting, the follow through. They're working remote.
Yep.
They got to improve their performance
Yep.
in front of customers. They have to hit numbers. I mean, all this stuff is
Got to
difficult. I
work
mean,
with rejection too.
yeah, I mean, there's the mental part of getting rejected all day long.
Yep.
So, and the sales leaders don't have the capability to coach these people through all these situations. And you just look at the investment, like, salespeople are kind of like athletes where, they have targets. They're either successful or they're not. They need to improve all
Yeah.
these things. But, like a professional athlete has, coaches all over them for every aspect of their life.
Yep.
And so, why wouldn't you do that with your salesperson?
Well, and I think that's a great point. I mean, if you're a professional football team
Mm-hmm.
and one of your expensive, wide receivers keeps dropping the ball,
Mm-hmm.
we don't just fire them.
Yeah.
I mean, or you don't just try to put them in a different location. You take them aside and you work with them, whoever that
Yeah.
is, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that's where the coaching, it's automatic. I mean, I don't think that there's a sports team out there that could live without a coach.
Yeah.
You know, if a coach gets ejected, then there is the assistant coach. If the assistant coach gets ejected, I mean, somebody's always taking that spot of a coach. It's not like, hey, call your own plays. It's a free for all, do
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of times happens. I think the sales is still like the wild, wild west where, there really isn't. There's only two. Last I looked, there was only two colleges that offered a major in sales, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and there's probably thousands by now of AI. And so, sales has been around forever. AI just shows up and takes over, so I love that piece. And I
Yeah.
think as we start to land the plane, there's that great study by Motorola that said every dollar that they invested in sales training for their team, they got $19 back.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful quote. Now, again, you can always, you know, um, extrapolate how you want, but I don't know about anybody on this call. But if I said, here's the offer for every dollar you guys send me, I'm going to send you 19 back. First question out of most people's mouth is, how many dollars can I send you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's the return. So, how do you guys measure like that? Is there a way that you measure your return on the investment that you're making in your sales team?
Um, yeah. Well, I don't know if we measure um, that aspect of it, but I mean, here's how I look at it: is it is the most important interaction in the company. I think like the executive at a company, they're not, they're thinking maybe a board meeting or some other things going on in the business, but the salesperson interacting with the customer is that, I mean, that is critical. And those sales activities are just critical day in and day out. So, I mean, just getting them a little bit better, just getting that sales team more efficient is going to drive profitability in the business. So that's why you would invest in it, just to improve, make sure that you're not wasting time on the sales team. And again, it also, if you look at the Gartner research, is that the CEOs aren't trusting,
Yeah.
the sales leaders to get it done. So, I mean, right there, you would say if it's the most important role in the business, you should be investing in that to improve it.
Well, and that's just so sad that we see people that don't invest at all in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, if you're at McDonald's and you're just taking orders, that's a different scenario than if you have to knock on doors and try to introduce somebody to your company, your service, how whatever that looks like. I mean, there's a big difference between those two. But B2B, like you guys are, I mean, that is a growing area of, I don't think AI is going to handle it. I think we always are going to need to have a face with a company.
Yeah,
So, I'm assuming you're seeing um, that sales career as a continued good spot for the
I
future.
think. I think niche manufacturing is the future for if you want a good career because yeah, AI is not going to take that. Um, a lot of things get manufactured overseas, but if you're in a niche manufacturing company, it's highly unlikely that, you're going to have competition or it's
Yeah.
going to go away. And there's not a lot of investment in it. So there's not going to be a lot of new entrants, a lot of new competition. It's the place to be.
Yeah.
And, and the sales roles are amazing. AI can't do it, but AI is going to be a kind of like a good partner for salespeople and for sales leaders to kind of help them with the training and
Yep.
that sort of thing. But and a lot of the great thing about AI with sales is a lot of the paperwork, a lot of the activities that you need to do with by typing in a routine thing is goes away. I mean, you'll be
Yeah.
able to get sales histories and customer information so much more easy
Yeah.
and you won't spend your time on those manual tasks. You'll actually be able to improve at your craft.
I'm shocked at how few sales professionals actually do any type of recon work on the customer ahead of time. I mean, I've had, again,
Yeah,
show up on LinkedIn and they want to help me with grow my roofing business, or they ask me what is it that you do, and I'm like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, seriously. It's just painful. I mean, that's one thing your group is really good at, is making sure that they're pretty involved
yeah,
in discussions early on with what is this company doing, how can we as Charter add value to them.
yeah. And just a recommendation for someone would be if you're going to go to someone on LinkedIn, just um, look at what they post, comment on it. Try and figure out who the person is and what they're, something a little deeper
Yeah.
before you start talking about trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
And that's
I
a,
mean,
it's just not, the industry is terrible
yeah.
at doing this.
I don't remember who asked me or told me this, but they said, you know what, if you do try to do a one-stop close type thing, and there are certain applications, maybe business to consumer, where that works, but I feel like you're asking someone to marry them on the first date. And
Mm-hmm.
it was when someone put it to me that way, I'm like, oh my gosh, you sure, if you identify somebody that might be a great opportunity to partner with in your business, get to know them, find out
Mm-hmm.
how you can add value to them, find out how, you can partner with them on something that may not even have anything to do with the sales thing. But man, you ask for somebody to marry them on the first date, that just seemed a little awkward. So I love that concept. And that I think is where, again, leadership, sales leadership, really is held responsible, because we don't
Mm-hmm.
equip the people, really well. So, but yeah, I got, hey, two questions for you. I'm going to let you
Yep.
go. Number one, Brad, what would your tip of the day be for somebody listening? Maybe it's something that we already covered. Maybe it's something that you haven't shared yet. But what would your tip of the day be for someone listening today?
Yeah, well, I think it would be to use a coach for that sales training part of it. I mean, we know again that sales leadership has failed for a long time. A lot of it is it's due to poor hiring and training techniques.
Yeah.
And it's very hard. The outside sales roles are very complex. Plus, there's all the other responsibilities for sales leaders. So use
Yeah.
a coach to help you train your team.
Well, and I think those are great words. I think the interesting thing for you, like, it probably duplicates your effort then, because if your coach right now is helping one of your sales professionals and you're able to do something else, people are worried about, I don't have the time to train my team. One of the great ways is, what, get someone else to do it, because
Yeah.
then you can go do what you're good at. So that's great advice. The hardest question of the day for you, Brad, is if Texas A&M and the Badgers were playing football, who would you be rooting for?
Yeah, I'm a Badger. I mean, I went to Wisconsin. I've had season tickets for about 40 years, so I think
Okay.
I
Well,
think that's an easy one. I mean,
you went to
Texas
Texas
A&M is
A&M, so I didn't know who.
Aggies are the number 4 in the country, and Wisconsin's like last. So
Yeah,
I don't
so
think that's
this
going to
year,
happen. Yeah.
no, so this year you'd be rooting for
Uh,
Texas A&M if they were both on TV. Yeah, oh my gosh, so you're still have tickets. That's awesome.
although
That's cool.
I loved my time in Texas.
Yeah, no, no,
Mhm.
absolutely. So, last thing is if something that we talked about today, Brad, sparked somebody that they want to learn more, maybe about Charter Wire, they want to learn more about you, about your thought, maybe they have a question for you. What would the best way for people to connect with you? How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best way. I think
Okay,
that's, probably for a lot of people, but just hit me on LinkedIn. Um,
perfect.
I have no problem, connecting. It'd be great.
And there's a lot of Brad Davises on LinkedIn, so probably put Charter Wire in there
Yep,
just so.
Charter Wire, Brad Davis, Charter Wire.
Yep, that'll help you out a little bit. So awesome. Well, I could talk about this all day with you.
Yeah,
I love your thought process here. And I think again for us, there's rather than people jumping into your next podcast or jumping into your next thing, just take a minute and kind of just self-evaluate your sales team. If you're the owner and you have a sales team, if you're a sales leader and you have a sales team, or maybe you're in sales, take a look at what is going on in your world. If you're struggling, that's why we're here, is to help with that. Why struggle on this alone? I don't know why. I have coaches for my stuff that when I'm struggling with something, I have somebody that I call because I don't know all the answers. And I don't think ChatGPT's the right way to go yet for you. So, just but check in with us here at Positive Polarity, check in with Brad. And if you don't, I totally get it. But just don't get mad at Brad or I, because we gave
Mhm.
you some great opportunities. We gave you some great things to consider when looking at your sales. And again, you might not be able to look at your sales career and be able to find your blind spot. So find somebody that can. So again,
Mhm.
thanks, Brett, for all this. It's awesome. Great information, and looking forward to seeing what 26 brings for Charter. You
It's
guys
gonna
are
be
on
great. It's gonna be
guys
an
are on the
amazing
up.
year. Yep.
That's awesome. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you again for all the information, and we will be in touch.
Thanks, Dave. That was fun. Thank you.